Hi, it's Angela with the Mount Airy Public Library. We're here today for another fairy tale, and this one is known as the Magic Cap. It's a Belgian fairy tale. So let's listen in.
All right, everybody gather around once again. Come in close, and you can invite the grown-ups too. They probably need to hear this story as well. Now remember, listen with both ears, right? And turn on the imagination so that all the words I'm saying can turn into pictures in that wonderful mind of yours. Now this, as Angela said, is a Belgian fairy tale, and there's a little lesson at the end, so stay tuned for that. Once there was a farmer. His name was Jan. Now, Jan was a pretty good farmer. He and his wife had a little small farm, and they did pretty well on their farm, but sometimes Jan could be a little too trusting. And as a result of that, people would often try to fool him and sometimes play tricks on him. And he tended to believe people a little too much sometimes. And this was bothersome to his wife, but it was just the way he was, and she loved him just the same. One day, Jan's wife sent him into the village to sell a calf that they had, to have a little extra money. So they put a little rope around the calf's neck, and Jan took off toward the village to sell the calf. And his wife said, "Now be sure you get a good price. Don't let anybody try to trick you or fool you. Get a good price for the calf." Well, he's walking through the woods, and he passes by, there's three boys where he can't see them down in another part of the woods. And they see Jan go by, and they recognize him as being poor little Jan, who sometimes can be tricked easily. So they decide to do just that. The three boys separated. Two of them ran on ahead down the path where Jan couldn't see them, and the third walked up to the path and stopped him and said to Jan, he said, "Well, where are you going with that goat?" And I said, "Well, this isn't a goat. This is a calf." And the boy said, "No, that is most definitely a goat. What are you going to do with a goat?" And he said, "But I'm taking him to the village to sell him, and it's a calf." And the boy said, "Well, no one's ever going to give you a good price for a goat like that," and went on his way. And in his mind, Jan thought, "Well, I know this is a calf. I know it is. I can tell by looking at it." He walked on through the woods a little farther, and he encountered the second boy as part of their little scheme. And the second boy looked at him and said, "Oh, I see you've got your goat with you." And Jan said, No, this isn't a goat. This is a calf. Can't you see?" The boy said, No, I know a goat when I see one. That's most certainly a goat. Are you taking him to the village? Are you going to try to sell him? No one's going to give you much of a price for a goat." And the second boy went on his way. Later down the path, Jan encountered the third boy, who was also in on the joke. And he said the same thing. "Oh, I see you've got a goat there. You headed to the village, to the market, maybe to try to sell him? No one's ever going to give you a good price for that goat. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your day." Well, by this time, poor Jan was so confused, and three people had now told him that his calf was a goat. And he was so upset and so frustrated, he handed the rope to the third boy and said, "Here, just take him. Just take him. No one's going to pay for a goat. I shouldn't have ever brought a goat. I thought it was a calf. I'm so confused." And he went back home. He told his wife what had happened, and she knew instantly that he'd been tricked by these three boys. They'd planned and plotted against him. And poor Jan had been fooled once again, and now they'd lost their calf. So the wife came up with a plan of her own. She took some of the money they had, and she went into the village. And she went to three separate inns, and she paid for three separate meals for four people. Paid for the meal and the drink and everything that went with it. Then she came back and she told Jan, said, here's what we're going to do. I want you to go out and find those boys again, and here's what we're going to do. And she told him her plan. The next day, Jan went into the village, and he found the three boys still together, still laughing, probably at his expense, for the free goat they'd gotten, which was really a calf. And true to the plan, Jan put a big smile on his face and walked up to the boys and said, "I just want to thank you for taking that goat off my hands. I'm so glad someone did that. I'm glad to be rid of it. As a matter of fact, I'd like to reward you for helping me out." Well, the boys were a bit confused. They said, what are you talking about?" And Jan said, I want to give you a reward. Why don't we go to the inn here and have a drink? So they went to the inn, all four of them, because Jan was paying for it. And as they were drinking, Jan said, well, how about a nice meal? And the boys said, well, certainly, as long as you're paying. And the innkeeper came over, and Jan said, food for all four of us, and he took off his cap. And he sort of twirled it around on his finger. He said, and it's all paid for, is it not, innkeeper? And the innkeeper looked and said, as a matter of fact, sir, it is. And they all enjoyed a delicious meal. The next day, Jan went out again, according to the plan, and found the boys again and told them the same thing. He said, the more I think about it, the more I appreciate what you've done. Let's go have another meal together at another inn I know. So they went to the second inn that his wife had visited and had a drink, and Jan took off his cap and twirled it on his finger and said, innkeeper, how about a meal for all of us, all four of us? And it is paid for, is it not? And the innkeeper said, well, yes, sir, it is all paid for. The third day, the boys were looking for Jan, and sure enough, here he came. Poor, gullible Jan, and said, let's go to the third inn I know for another meal. One last reward for taking that silly goat off my hands. And off they went to the third inn, and Jan took off his cap and was twirling it on his finger and looked at the innkeeper and said, a fine meal for the four of us, and it's all taken care of, is it not? And the innkeeper replied, yes, it is. The boys were amazed, and they had to ask, how did you do that? How did you pay him without paying him? Jan said, oh, it's the cap. This is a magic cap. Didn't you know that? That's why I wear it all the time. All I have to do is twirl it on my finger like this, and people will believe whatever I say. The boys were amazed and startled and said, would you think about selling that cap? Jan said, oh, no, I could never sell my magic cap. It's too valuable. Well, they said, well, how about 20 gold pieces? No, Jan said, I couldn't sell it. Well, what about, the boys talked, said, what about 50? What about 50 pieces of gold? Because a magic cap would be much more than that to the boys. And Jan, according to the plan, said, no, that's tempting, but no, thank you. The boys talked among themselves in a huddle and came out and said, all right, 200 pieces of gold. It's all we have among us. We'll give it to you if you'll give us that magic cap. Jan said, let me understand. You're going to give me 200 pieces of gold for this cap. Yes, we are. All right, said Jan, give me the gold. And the boys went and gathered up all their gold, came back to the inn in a huge bag, and there it was for Jan. Handed it to him. He handed them the cap and said, thank you, and was on his way. Well, we all know the cap was not magic, but the boys tried to use it anyway. They went to another inn and had another huge meal, and when the innkeeper came for payment, they twirled the cap on their finger and said, well, it's all taken care of, isn't it? And the innkeeper said, no, sir, it is not. You owe me money for this meal, and it's quite a bill. But the boy said, it has to be, and they twirled the cap again, and they said, no, sir, there you owe me. And so the boys tried to run. They tried to run away from the innkeeper, and the innkeeper called the local military officials, and they came and got the boys and put them in jail for not paying their bill and running away. Taught them a good lesson. In the meantime, guess who had 200 pieces of gold? Jan and his wife. The tricksters had been tricked. Sort of just desserts, I guess you'd say. It served them right. So Jan and his wife lived very well for a very long time on that gold, and the three boys had plenty of time to sit in jail for a while and think about what their misdeeds had brought them. Now, what did I learn from this story? I learned that it's not nice to try to fool people, and not nice to try to trick them, especially when you know better, no matter who they are. And at the same time, it's good to be trusting, but it's best not to be too trusting. Sometimes that's important too. That is our story. Thank you for listening. You've been a wonderful audience, and we will see you next time.